Welcome to the Changemaker's Corner, powered by Fuel, an interview series spotlighting different grassroots leaders, social impact innovators, and young changemakers across Toronto and the GTA. At Changemaker's Corner, we pull back the curtain on changemaking work, shine a light on the realities of the social impact sector, and reimagine a better future for meaningful and authentic change in our communities. Learn more about Fuel at fuelchange.org and on social media at Fueling Changemakers. And today we have the best guest, the greatest guest. Okay, fine. We have a great guest, a coach, a community leader, and the founder and ED of Fuel, an authentic community for young changemakers where they are invited to rest, given opportunities to grow, and make meaningful connections with like-minded individuals. Please welcome Erica Procter.
Thanks, Patrick. Okay.
Erica, welcome to Changemaker's Corner.
Thank you.
I know there was a lot of prep. I know that you were told last minute that we would do this interview, but
All
you
good.
were so down and ready, and that was kind of a testament to, that moment, I believe, was really a testament to what you feel about, how you feel about Fuel. It really was, just being ready to be there and be present and be on the ground is a huge thing for me. So honestly, I didn't say thank you in that way, but it did mean a lot for you to do this.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, Erica. Okay, I'm not going to ask you who you are. I am going to ask how your day was, though.
You.
How was your day? What did you do today? Leading up to this interview, your morning, what happened?
My day was good. I think as I was thinking about coming here today, I don't often think about having an interview as I'm someone famous. You know how those scenes in the movie and you see someone and they're in the bathtub and they're interviewing. I never want that, but I feel like there's something really special about this because I've always wanted people to be curious about me. I've always wanted to be seen as somebody who's worthy of interest. So I think that was a nice thing to think about today and a nice way to come into this, to be Patrick's just interested about me and he's gonna ask me some questions.
I absolutely am, and super appreciative of that. And I get how maybe the negative self-talk could make you seem like you're not maybe interesting, but I'm not the only person that is interested in hearing from you, Erica. And so, Angelica's right here, and I'm sure she's very interested in talking to you. Yeah, see, she is. Okay, I think we're gonna go right into this. I mentioned a little bit about what you do, but I want to start from the beginning. So what is, in your way, and we have time, so what is the origin story of Erica Procter?
Okay. I've never thought about this for myself. I think I've thought a lot about, the story of how I came to start Fuel, but I've never thought about my story from the start. So let's do some of that.
Yeah.
So I was born in Toronto. I've lived here my whole life. I love this city. And, whenever I'm outside of the city and people are like, oh, you're from Toronto? No, you mean Brampton or Bramalea or I'm no, I live in downtown Toronto. They're like, whoa, how do you do that? Right? Mm-hmm. But I love living in downtown Toronto and love this city. And I grew up in the West End. My family was super normal. Just really normal. My parents are very stable. My dad worked in finance. My mom was a homemaker. And that was sort of how I grew up. And one of the things that I do remember about myself in high school, I always had all the hair colors, right? Just like I do now. And when I graduated from high school, they said, we're not sure what Erica is going to do, but we know she's not going to do it the same as everybody else. And I think that was a really good moment for me and something that I think has been true about myself throughout my life is I might sometimes be a rule follower, but I'm also always thinking about how to challenge the status quo and how to do things differently and not follow the path that maybe has been laid out for me by other people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think your tendency to challenge the status quo has been one of the many reasons why me and the community of Fool gravitate towards you. I think that's it. I think you have this inherent kind of thing about you that like the one way people say you could do things is not the only way. And
Absolutely.
I think that belief system, as simple as it is not like, it's not super common. Other people, you know, and I forget sometimes, but other people do just like the way things are and like to go that direction. But it's not common. And I think that's a thing. And I think your hair color was also part of that journey, you know, kind of like
Definitely.
another
For
symbol
sure.
of
For sure.
that.
Yeah.
Would you say so? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also the fact that my parents were okay with that. Like my parents were always supportive of me to like look the way that I wanted. And my appearance was always really important because I think it was important to how I perceived myself and how I expressed myself. So yeah, that was definitely important to who I was and still am.
Yeah, and who you still are for
Yes,
sure.
yes.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm sensing that you had, you know, a lot of support in terms of like your parents just like believing in what you do, and that one comment you said where it was just like we don't know what Erica will do after high school, but we know that it might, you know, not be like everybody else. It'd be her own thing. And so, so maybe no obstacles in terms of the support of your family, but did that ideal or that kind of way of thinking ever come at a cost? Was it ever, do you find yourself, even from when you started to all of the work you've done since high school, did it ever come at a cost to be someone who challenges the status quo, to someone who pushes the boundaries?
So I think this has really come forward for me in starting Fuel. And I think I have along the way made enough traditional choices that I haven't really sort of pushed that in a way that I've felt like it was challenging for me. And in starting Fuel and in putting my own money into Fuel, that's been a real challenge. I feel like that really is doing things differently, right? Like you and I have talked about this. And, you know, I've had so many comments from people about like, well, you're never getting that money back. I had a lawyer say that one to me. Wow. Or, well, you have to bring in money, or that's not a very good business plan. Like all of these comments. And for a long time, that felt like total failure to me. I felt like I was just basically paying myself to create a job for myself. And I've done a lot of work to reframe that and see that differently and get away from this idea that what is of value is paid, right? Like there's such a capitalist notion that, you know, if you're not paid for something, it's not worth anything. And then for me, I feel like it's doubled because not only am I not getting paid, I'm also putting my own money in it. So it's like, it's taken a lot. And, you know, like I mentioned, my dad works in finance, right? This whole concept of like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're not making money? What do you mean you're putting your money into this thing? That's taken a lot of work. But I feel like there is a really, I'm going to use your word, but a really radical approach to leveraging privilege in this particular approach of saying, I'm going to work alongside community and I'm going to put my money in it as well. So that's the point where I've got to, but that's taken a lot of work to get comfortable with doing this thing that I want to do in a really, really different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess like, you know, I mean, you mentioned a little bit about the external kind of pressures and structures that you maybe worked, or I guess mindsets that you worked within before, and challenging that is hard, but also there's an internal thing too. There's like, yeah. So like, I'm kind of curious a little bit more about that. Like, so I get it. Like, yes, father in finance, you know, this kind of radical approach to community building and building a not even a business, but a community. And what that looks like, I totally understand how that could be radical, and, you know, how you'll face resistance in that process. But internally, like, what did it feel like to, you know, hear these things from the lawyer? What did it feel like to, even now, constantly like still thinking about how you're going to fund everything? Like, how does it feel for you? Is it difficult? And if so, like, what do you tell yourself to continue going?
Okay, there's a lot of questions. Okay. Give me one of those.
Yeah. So internally, I just curious to know more about how it feels to kind of like make these approaches, these radical approaches. How does it feel internally? What are the challenges you deal with?
Yeah. So I think on the good days, it feels amazing. Like it does feel amazing to do something that I really believe in, to put my all, to bring everything I have to fuel and create something that I really love and that I want to be a part of. I think on the not so good days, I have tremendous anxiety around money, because I know I can't do this forever. I understand now the sector really well. I'm not from the not-for-profit sector, but I've certainly learned a lot since deciding to start Fuel. And the crisis, the sector's in a crisis when it comes to money. So yeah, there's huge anxiety and pressure that I put on myself to figure this thing out. And yeah, there are some days where I feel like I actually just can't do it. Like I can't make myself do that thing today. Like I want to do all the other amazing things that we do at Fuel, right? I want to help plan events or go to events or talk to you and Tubbs and Monique and do all those fun things that I love. So it can become a bit debilitating at times. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I have to do it because otherwise, Fuel won't survive. So I will.
Okay. So I'm feeling a level of just like a deep sense of purpose to it, so that sometimes we'll have to transcend like the moments where it's really hard, is to be like, but this is what I feel called to do. This is what I want to do. And I think that feeling is hard to listen to for some people. And so the fact that you do is like really huge, yeah. Okay, let's get into it. I want to know, so Fuel specifically, can you talk a little bit more about how Fuel started? Like what led to it, what you were maybe doing before, where the idea came, the origin story of Fuel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I worked for the province for over a decade. I worked in the child and youth sector. And like I said, there was a path laid out for me there. I was a manager. Next step was to be director. Honestly, right now, if I'd stay there, I'd probably be an assistant deputy minister, right? Like that path was just there. I just had to walk the path. And I was like, no fucking way. I'm not walking that path. So I left, I quit. That was 5 years ago. And I wanted to do something really different. I wanted to get closer to community, closer to what young people were doing. So I started looking, and I started 2 jobs and quit both within less than a year. And one was with Toronto Police, one was with TMU. And what I was continually reminded in those jobs is what's important to me is people. And I felt that within those organizations, people were interchangeable. So there was a job to do, and they were going to tell you what it was. And it had nothing to do with really the strengths that you brought or who you were as a person or what motivated you. They're just like, just do this job, and we can pretty much pick you up and put somebody else in, and they can do it as well. And that was just so difficult for me. There were lots of good things in those jobs, amazing people. I mean, I was leading the race-based data strategy for the Toronto Police, like such important, incredibly important work for the city. But the fact that the culture was frankly so toxic and not centered in the people that were working for them or part of the city. So I quit both of those. The first time I quit, I thought about starting something of my own, and it was too terrifying. Okay. And then the second time, I was like, okay, the world is telling you something. Like you just need to do it. And the reason why Young Changemakers is, I remember going to conferences and I would hear young people talking about the grassroots work that they were doing. And I was so excited by what they were doing. And they talked about, building the plane while flying it. And I was like, that sounds so exciting. Like that sounds like something so different from what I've been doing. And I kept thinking about these young people and how exciting it would be to be a part of what they were doing. They thought so differently. Like I felt, a connection to this piece around really challenging the status quo, seeing something, that didn't work for them, that they didn't like in their communities, and then they're just deciding to do something about it. Like that to me was amazing, like not being held back by how things should be or how they're done or how other people do them, etc. They're just like, no, I'm going to try this thing. And I was really enthralled by that approach. And I kept thinking about that and how I could be a part of that. And that was sort of the kernel of the idea for Fuel.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a few things, but a lot of people will watch these young change makers and, they're really inspiring, and they go in and they do something so different and dedicate their whole beings to it. And I obviously also 100% believe in it and supporting it, but I support it. But I think that people could watch this and be like, wow, that's so great. But I think that's a difference between that and someone who sees it and is just like, wow, I love this. I want to be involved. I want to help. I want to take the next step. I want to reframe the way I think to be able to help. That is a lot of that's a lot of labor and a lot of a risk. And I feel like people who have established lives and homes and families and whatever, I feel like when you have your whole life kind of set in a structure, and then something changes your mind and you want to rearrange all of that, that's a huge thing. People won't do that. That's scary. It really is scary. And to make all those changes in your life, to do something different in that way. And so I just did it feel scary for you when you started Fuel? How did that feel to did you have to go back to home and be like, Sandy, I don't think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do this. What was the transition like? You know? Yeah.
So yes, it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. I think because of all the things that you talk about, because I have Sandy in my life, because I've got 2 kids who are incredible and doing so well, because I have all that stability, I think, and my husband Sandy is an entrepreneur. He's done this many times, and he was like, absolutely, you can do that. You can totally do it. You should definitely do that. I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. So I think, yes, one way of looking at it is to say I gave up the stability of the potential jobs I could have had elsewhere, right? Or, I think just the structure of those organizations, I will say it's so much easier to work within an organization, because once you get in and learn all the rules, then you just have to follow them. You just have to kind of do the thing, right? Yeah, exactly.
Path, yeah.
And that requires a lot less energy. But I think what I really realized through taking those jobs and quitting those jobs was I wanted to create a place where I wanted to work. And these were not places that I wanted to work. And it was like a slap in the face to be like, wake up. These places are not going to offer you that. I'll be honest, I probably, if someone had offered me a good job with a nonprofit, I probably would have taken it. But nobody did.
No, yeah.
But nobody did. So yeah, it was terrifying. I really had no idea what I was doing. I was not an entrepreneur. I had no experience in nonprofit or grassroots work or community-based work, none of that. But I think what I did rely on was I knew I could build really good culture. I'd done that in everywhere I've gone. And I knew that I could create a space where people felt seen. And I really do believe that as human beings, that's what we all crave. We want people in our lives who see us for who we are and create this space where we feel we can be the people that we are. So that's what I wanted to bring to Fuel, and that's what I wanted to bring to young changemakers, is a space to say first, what's happening in your lives? What is going on? what work are you doing? What are your challenges? And learn from them and see what we could create. And then create this community, create this space where they themselves really felt seen and valued. So I think that was the one thing that I really held on to say, okay, yeah, you don't know like 10,000 things about starting something, but you know this thing. And I really believe that people, especially at that time, like 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, there was so much talk of like toxic work cultures and burnout. And I was like, people want this. And I felt like if I could really embrace that and create something, that people would gravitate towards it and they would get value out of it.
And you were right. Yeah, you were right. Does it feel good to be right?
Of course.
Yeah, good. Because you were right. And I think, and people do need this. And so I just want to let you know, you're right. But again, like you said, build the plane by flying it. That's exciting, but it's also incredibly dangerous and risky. And it's not an easy job, but at the same time, in a way, it could also be liberating. You know?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think on the best days, it feels like that, right? Yeah.
Yes,
like
for
you
sure.
have an open sandbox.
Yep.
And now I don't have to be confined to the ways that certain systems work, and I could build my own. And I think it's a beautiful thing. It is incredibly hard. And I would say a lot harder than maybe, again, just walking the path that's already set.
It absolutely is.
But in a way can also be liberating. So does that feel that way for you too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's partly what makes investing my money in Fuel worthwhile, because I can do this any way I want. I don't have a funder or a foundation or a donor or anybody saying, you need to do it this way, you need to report in this way. Like on our team, we can do with Fuel what we want and what is really, really connected to what we're hearing from our community and what is working for them. We don't have to say, okay, well, you know, this organization, this government body is providing funding for this. Like, I think one example is, you know, there's a lot of money out there to, you know, encourage young people to do volunteer work. And we could have gone after those dollars. But fundamentally, I believe that young people, particularly young change makers, should be paid. That work should be valued. And by saying you should do this on a volunteer basis, I think it just really supports a dysfunctional system and a dysfunctional way of doing change work. So we're able to do that. We're able to make those choices and say, we're not going to take that money because it does not align with our values. And we feel like we're able to say, everybody who's involved in Fuel gets paid. Every young person that we've worked with, a conversation, an interview, a co-development session, our youth advisory committee, everybody is paid because their experience is worthwhile.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, because you're not necessarily tied to or at least fundamentally or in terms of the ideals of the organization, you're not tied to a structure. So because of that, if your clients and the people you serve is the community, that becomes your boss. They become your boss.
Yes.
They're the ones you're listening to. They're the ones who are like, what do you need? We will be there to support you. And that is not, like, other people would look at that and not see, like, it wouldn't make sense to them. It wouldn't, you wouldn't be able to measure that. But to me, it is exactly how something like this should work. But because that's the beliefs that we have at Fuel, it brings on its own obstacles. And that's why I said, like, funders, I know that Erica said that, but, you know, if you want to give money to Fuel, we do welcome these opportunities.
We do. Yes, we do.
But I think the right funders will see like what this is about and be and support us in that way, rather than kind of like strong arming certain things after, you know, funding. And that's what we want, right? We want people to fund and be a part of Fuel that actually believe in its work and want to support that and move it forward, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Why wellness? Fuel is so focused on the wellness of young change makers. What made you choose that?
Yeah. I think that this relates to me in terms of like supporting people for who they are. And I think when you care for people and give them the space to bring all of who they are into, and for me, like throughout I'm talking about in my career, and oftentimes that was allowing them to do that at work, right? I think naturally you come to care about how they are. Like if they're well, if they're doing well. And well can be in all kinds of different areas, right? But I think it really was based in that. I couldn't create these really strong relationships with the people that I was working with and supporting them to do their best at work and not then think about how do I support this person to be well? And I think I've always been somebody who like brings fun into work. Like I'm always doing team building things and bringing games into work. And, like when I worked at TMU, I remember I did like games Fridays for my team, and we would get online and play a game. And the other teams are like, she's doing what? You're working for Erica? She lets you play games on Fridays?
Yeah, she does.
And yeah, I was like, yeah, we're doing this. Because it was so important. Like people were so sick of being online and they were so exhausted, like just so worn out. And it seems counterintuitive to then be like, oh, take an hour out of your week and play a game. But it's so important for like feeding people's joy and, just having fun and connecting with others and getting away from it all for a little bit. So I think it gradually came as just having this connection to people and wanting them to be their best. I think in that comes this commitment to, well-being and wellness. And it all sort of flowed from there.
So you mentioned play. I'm going to go on that a little bit.
Okay.
This is a huge thing that I've learned about you and that I love about you is that it's such an important part. But I think that it's not just something that you do to like fill time, or it's not something that you're doing as some sort of like a quirky addition to your work. I think it's very much, it's a huge part. It's like almost in a way could even be the foundation is this level of like of play and of imagination and of joy. And so like what is that? Can you give me more about your philosophy of play in your work? Why is it so important to you?
Sure.
And yeah, curious.
So I think there's a lot that happens when we play. I think there's a lot that happens in terms of connection with other people, but I feel that to me, we sort of forget ourselves. Like I love escape rooms. They're like one of my favorite things. Even through COVID, my husband and I played escape games at home. But there's something about how you just you become the person you naturally are. Charades is the same, right? And there's this ability to really get rid of the layers and the who we show people we are and we just are, right? And I feel like there's something so amazing in that in terms of letting people see who we are. So there's that piece around connection. But also in doing that, I think we kind of forget our stresses, we forget our anxieties, we forget all of the like layers of stuff that we carry around with us, and we just play and we have fun. So there's so much in that. I think even beyond that, what I've been thinking about more recently is I went to this Chorus pod. I've just become a member of Chorus, and they have these, conversation groups. And I was struck by the conversation, and they were talking about how play supports us to reconnect our body with our brains, right? This mind-body connection. And I think for changemakers in particular, because of the burnout, because of the pressure, the immense pressure that you all put on yourselves, we disconnect. We disconnect from feeling what's happening in our bodies because we just need to keep going. You just need to keep going to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think I'm really interested in thinking more about the role of play in reconnecting our mind to our bodies. And I think that is so going to be connected to, I hope, more of what we're going to do at Fuel and support our community to really better understand what's happening in their bodies so they can move towards wellness.
That's so beautiful. And it's so like it's actually quite it's like very, it's philosophical, but it's deep. Like I'm also hearing connections to like your inner child. Like when you're young, you know, like you don't, and you're playing a game with someone, like you're not thinking about like the perception of you, you know, like as a kid.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I feel like a lot of people these days, especially young people, like particularly young people, are really concerned with their perception. I think a lot of that has to do with social media. A lot of that has to do with a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But like the perception of us, what people see us as, is very important. So much so that it could dictate how we act and move in every environment that we're in. And but when you're young, when you're a kid, you don't think about that. You know, like when you're playing with a friend, you're not being like, is my hair look okay? Or like, do I have enough followers on Instagram? Like you're not thinking about things. You're just playing a game and you're entirely present and you're just being. And I think and reconnecting to that version of us is so important because we've, like you said, drifted so far away from that. And I think life makes that happen, but also it doesn't need to. You know, like I think that life, sure, and like the system, sure, and like existing in this world, sure, affects these things and makes us have to care about them. But I think carving out time in our lives where it doesn't have to matter, it becomes that much more important, you know? And I think play is a really like neutralizing, beautiful, fun, joyful way of doing that. We play a lot of games at Fuel, which is really great. It's really great. It makes it one of the best jobs ever. And so, yeah, okay. Well, thank you. I hope we continue playing. I hope that we make more of it in Fuel, you know, and it's great. So, okay. Now I'm going to change gears a little bit, a couple more times. And then I'm going to maybe ask Angelica if she wants to do a question, but I'll do that after this. Cool? Yeah, okay, because I'm really curious to know what Angelica thinks. I'm talking off screen here to people, but there are people behind. It's a very small crew right now, but I am talking like as if there is people in the room, because there is. So burnout, imposter syndrome, you know, the financial instability of nonprofit and grassroots work, all these words that we use often in our work because we're serving our community. What made Fuel become that? Why did that become what we are working with now? Because I know how it started. I know you want to work with young change makers, but now these words, these feelings, where did that come from for you? How did you know that this is what the community needed?
It was because we talked to young change makers.
That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. But can you tell me more?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, you know, like I said, I had this sort of idea when I wanted to start something, and I, you know, knew the things about myself that I wanted to bring into that work. But I had no idea what young change makers needed. No idea. So we started talking to them. So we talked to over 50 young change makers and we asked them. And they were incredible conversations. And these are the things that they talked about. These were not assumptions that we made. We didn't read articles. We actually had conversations to say, what is happening in your life? What is the work that you're doing? And what are your challenges? Like what is getting in the way? And what could support your work? And these were the things that they talked about almost across the board. So much loneliness. Like so much loneliness. They feel so alone in this work. And that is something I can also really relate to. It is very lonely work. They talked about, you know, also on top of that, mental health challenges as a result of doing this type of work, burnout, of course, just rampant burnout. And I was really so honored that they shared these experiences with us. They were very, very honest to talk about what was happening in their lives and what their experiences were like, and of course also financial hardship, right? So these all came from those conversations. And then we've built from there and tried to talk to them about, well, what are some of the things that we could create and build for you that might start to address those. So, when they were talking about loneliness, we started talking about, let's try community dinners, get people to come out in person, talk to people one in front of the other, have a conversation, see if you can build that community. And I think part of what we've heard is that there's real value in having a conversation with somebody who really understands the work that you're doing. I think for a lot of the people that we talk to, they didn't have people in their lives who understood this change-making work that they were doing. They didn't get it, people in their families or their friends. So to have somebody who gives you that like knowing head nod of like, yes, yes, I see that, I see you,
yes,
is really powerful. And I think it kept going from there, in terms of just going back to those conversations and thinking about what are the ways that we can support them.
And I think that's why, like, back to like the start of Fuel and your choices for it. I think like it seems so simple, but but I think that like when I look at it, I can also understand why maybe other people wouldn't understand the connection between that. But you want to help young change makers, and what do? You invite young change makers to be in a space and tell you what they need. And I think Fuel, that being the foundation of Fuel, is what makes it so impactful and authentic. It's because it is led by young change makers' voices.
Yes.
That's what it's led by.
Yeah.
And even when I got brought on earlier this year, it was just like so clear. And I don't think I would have taken this gig if I didn't know that it was based off of these really very real voices that I hear every day. And so when I saw that right on the website at the forefront of the interview, just everything, obviously I was just like, this is where I want to be, because it's based in real things that I hear every day, And I think a lot of other organizations, nonprofits, like they have the right idea to help a community, the right idea to help, they see a cause, they want to help it, but it's like there's a disconnect there sometimes. And that disconnect a lot of the time for me is that it's just like, oh, a lot of people here want to help a lot of people here, but they don't know the community. They don't know what they need truly. They just know they need help and want to build an organization to do that. You need to be there on the ground listening to what they need. And I think that's what makes Fuel different than a lot of other nonprofits that I've worked with. And so you have the right idea. You're in the right direction. Yeah, you are. I'm going to do a little time check. We're good. Angelica, a member of the YC, is in the room right now. Angelica, super awesome. Angelica, I was wondering if you have any questions for Erica before I continue.
I do.
Okay.
So first, I feel so inspired and I admire you a lot.
Thank you.
And thank you for everything you said. So I was thinking, like, what would be your advice for like the first step that a young change maker, not a young change maker necessarily, but a person that wants to, like you, go out of that field or that path they're following, but they want to do something else, like, but they don't want to lose at the same time that stability or that economic stability, or they are so pressured by society or family or financial that they don't know how to get out of that, let's say, comfort zone or not. But what will be that first step for them to do that in order to jump to the other side that will fulfill them more and do what they really want to do?
Okay. Okay. Well, I hate to give advice because I feel I will, but I hate to give advice because it feels a bit like I'm making a lot of assumptions about like individual situations. Like I like to talk to people and understand what's going on with them, and then sort of support them to see a way forward.
Sorry, before I always wanted to interrupt. You should give advice for sure. I think what you should do though is maybe instead of imagining it be someone else, what if it was also imagining like little you or like younger you about to make this transition? Because it's the same advice you're going to give, but at least you know the situation younger you's in. And so you could like speak more truth to that. Okay. But I think either way, the advice, you can give it to anyone because it's great advice. But go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think then, and I've seen this in so many people that I've worked with, and I see it in myself also, is oftentimes the barrier that people have is just the belief in themselves. Like it's like so many people I've seen and I've been like, you could totally do this. Like I can see you can do it, and it's just confidence that gets in the way. So there is something about just doing it, like being scared, feeling all the feelings, like having all of that and still saying, I'm going to do it. And I think oftentimes you find like you figure it out if you just try and then take one more step and one more step. That's what I try, and that's what I say to myself. That's what I've said to many people who I've worked with, is it's just like trust in yourself. So you're welcome.
Thank you. Belief. That is so much stronger. Like I feel like the processes, the methods, like making the organization, writing the grant, hiring people, making the dinner, that is all fine. We can do that. That you could learn, but the belief in yourself, that is like the fuel. That is the fuel. The motivating energy that we need to continue in this work. Honestly, like the reality is it is an uphill battle. Working in nonprofit sector, doing grassroots work, helping a community is not the norm. There is not a lot of space for it in the system that we live under. Therefore is an uphill battle. So we know this. But what keeps us going? And you're right. I think it's the belief in ourselves. It's the belief that we could do it. And we believe in you, Angelica. We believe in you that you could do it. Maddie G, you too. I believe that you could do all the amazing things that you dream of with both your band and your video career. All of it. We believe in you. And sorry, I feel like I keep going on segues, but this is fun for me. And so I just want everyone to know that. And I know you believe in me too. You don't have to say it. Okay. Oh yeah, thanks, Erica. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I have one last question, and I want to like anchor the conversation in this before we finish up here. But thank you, Erica. Again, you're amazing. How do you feel? First of all, you feeling okay?
I feel good.
It was amazing to hear it, and like just all the work you did over the summer. But say it to you too. As I said, it's an uphill battle, and with an uphill battle comes shaping your entire kind of perspective of the work. And it can seem daunting, it can seem scary, it could also seem exhausting. And a lot of from that will come these more negative feelings towards the jobs that we're doing. It can easily make someone burnt out and therefore have this like the opposite of rose-colored glasses when it comes to looking at nonprofit work and specifically championing the wellness and young change makers. And so, but what is the other side? What is the perfect future? What is the utopia, in the perfect landscape, where things are different, where this kind of work is championed? What does Fuel look like to you? Yeah.
So I think what I would love to see is to really eliminate this assumption that in order to do this type of work, you need to suffer for it. I think there is this underlying belief that to support communities, to do grassroots work, to do social change work, you have to give everything you have, and then you have to give more, and you have to give more, and you have to sacrifice, and you have to be poor, and you have to be burnt out, and that's the way to do it. Like there is this belief that that is just the way it is done. And I would love that to be completely eliminated so that you could do this work in a way and have balance, like have real balance and give what you have to give, but also have time and energy for yourself and your family and your friends and all the other things that are part of building a great life. So that's what I would love to see. And I think that's what we want to do at Fuel. We want to start dismantling those assumptions, but also supporting young people to find ways to avoid burnout, to protect themselves, to, have social connections, to have time to rest, to do nothing, and hopefully over time in working with them, start to shift the way in which this entire social change sector functions.